Wednesday sees a pivotal moment for the near-term fate of the British economy. In other words, your money and mine, or let's be more accurate, your debt and my debt. Yes, it's Jeremy Hunt's March budget. Although the country is still counting the cost of the pandemic response and suffering a stubborn wave of inflation, which is affecting most Western economies, better than expected economic growth at the end of 2022 and into 2023, and the possible avoidance of a technical recession this year suggests the Chancellor may have some fiscal headroom with which to support hard-up Brits or even deliver tax cuts. So what do we think? That's tonight's big question. Is it safety first next week, or should Jeremy Hunt splash the cash? Let's get the views of the always fiscally prudent former Conservative government minister, best-selling author and television personality Anne Widdecombe. Good evening, Anne.
Good evening, Mark.
Anne, should Jeremy Hunt splash the cash in next week's budget?
Well, he should certainly spend in the interests of future growth. And I think what he should be spending is money on tax cuts. Because without tax cuts, we can't stimulate the economy. And without stimulating the economy, growth is going to remain sluggish. Inflation is going to remain with us. And so we do need to stimulate the economy. We also need to become very competitive as a result of Brexit and take full advantage of Brexit. So I would say that he should reduce taxes, both personal taxes and business taxes, and particularly abandon any plans to raise corporation tax, which will simply drive investment out. We've already had some driven out to Ireland because, the view is that this is not a business-friendly environment. So he should be prepared to do all those things. Now, I don't think he should go mad. I don't think he should produce a Liz Truss-type budget. I don't think he should go absolutely mad, but I think he should be guided by the principle that Britain will only thrive if it's competitive, and it won't be competitive unless its tax levels are lower than its rivals.
Now, Anne, on this programme, we've both spoken of the need for wage restraint in the public sector, given inflation and the budget deficit. However, is calling for tax cuts not therefore contradictory? The country's either broke or it isn't.
Well, I don't think that it is wise to spend money on wage settlements which fuel inflation. That is the crucial thing, fuel inflation. And if you have above inflation pay rises, then you create the well-known wage price spiral, whereby people can't live faced with the sudden hike in the cost of living, so they want their prices raised, and then people can't live, etc. So that it is not a contradiction to say we can spend money on tax cuts, but we really cannot spend money on fueling inflation. That is the point. I don't begrudge anybody a pay rise. It's when that pay rise fuels inflation that clobbers the entire country.
Although some, and not to interrupt you, but some would suggest that tax cuts are inflationary too, because they stimulate the economy and therefore they create heat in the economy, and that could be inflationary.
No, I don't believe that is the case, because what tax cuts actually do is they provide incentives to enterprise, they provide incentives to business, yes, of course. I mean, people could just simply spend the money that tax cuts generate, but also it enables them to stay within the inflation that there is at the moment. Now, if you look at Margaret Thatcher, she cut taxes and cut inflation at the same time.
And Anne, what about those junior doctors? And what about those junior doctors, some of whom are, I believe, being paid less now than sandwich makers at Pret a Manger? These are the people who are charged with keeping us alive.
Indeed, but actually doctors' pay is extremely reasonable. Junior doctors' pay has always been a source of argument. But if you actually look at it, junior doctors particularly now, work far less hours than they did only some years ago. And therefore, GPs are mainly part-time these days. And I do mean mainly part-time. Most of them are part-time rather than full-time. That is a statistical fact. So I'm not going to be that sympathetic to putting other people in danger just as a result of their pay rise. But I would say this. I fully understand that pay has fallen behind prices. And I fully understand that people do expect at some point to get back on at least an even keel. But you can't do it while the country is in the grip of inflation, because if you do, all you end up doing is pushing inflation further up. That is the whole point of large public sector pay rises. Private sector can only give pay rises when the productivity is there, when the money's coming in, then they can give it out. But the public sector is giving it out from our money, from our taxes, and it can't afford to do it at a level that pushes up inflation. I'm terribly sorry, that is just a rather grim fact of economic life.
Well, that's the issue, is that pay rises in the public sector is effectively an arms race with inflation. Anne, can I ask you about this proposed increase in corporation tax from 19% to 25%? Do you think a U-turn is coming? And if not, what could the political consequences be, especially on those Tory backbenches?
Well, first of all, I hope a U-turn is coming. This, after all, is simply not implementing a rise rather than cutting from the base that you are at now. So, it should be manageable. But crucially, if corporation tax goes up like that to about the level that they've got in France, this country will not be competitive. We won't attract inward investment. We won't stimulate enterprise. We won't do any of those things if we put business taxes up. And I can't understand why a Conservative government, of all things, doesn't understand that. So I think if the rise goes ahead, or even if some of the rise goes ahead, which I suspect would be a sort of compromise, even if some of the rise goes ahead, it will make Britain less competitive. And that is what is surely the Chancellor understands, that we will only get growth, we'll only hit inflation, we'll only stimulate the economy, people will only be better off if we, the country, are competitive. And at the moment, they're doing their level best to make sure that we're not competitive. And so we lose big industry to other countries.
Anne, we missed you last week. Great to have you back on the show. Anne Widdecombe there. Your reaction to what the former Conservative Government Minister Anne Widdecombe has had to say? She's hoping for a U-turn in relation to that corporation tax rise. What would you like to see from Wednesday's budget? Mark at gbnews.uk.